Good morning, everyone. So, today you and I are going to talk about jobs in IT, where programming or having the skills required to code may be irrelevant. And these are probably the most in-demand positions in IT, so listen up, let's get into it. Now, first and foremost, let's start at the bottom. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning. So if you are looking to have a job in IT where you are code related, now listen to what I just said, code related stuff. That doesn't mean necessarily that all you do is code. It might start out that way, and you don't have to take this exact path there. I can really only give you a perspective that I think is highly valuable, because I have worked with people who have achieved their position in IT, either through starting out being programmers or being project managers and not having like technical skills and so forth. And I can only say from my experience that when it comes to having, let's say, a project manager who has coding skills or actual programming experience versus having one without, it's leaps and bounds better to have one that actually knows how to write software. And this is not a video about that, but that's at least my take on matters. So let's get into it. First and foremost, junior programmer. In terms of IT, that is where, or rather, well, not necessarily just IT, but when it comes to programming related IT, software development, if you will, junior programmer is where most people will start out if you're going with the technical path in all of this. So, what is required in order to do that, and what's the demand? Well, I'm going to tell you that as a junior programmer, it kind of depends on which software profession you're going into. It's, for example, very difficult to get a job in some areas, and it's very, very, very easy to get it in other areas. I can tell you that the biggest challenge you face as a junior developer is just getting a foot in. But once you have that foot in, once you have gone from a junior, and you get from a junior to a mid-level programmer fairly quickly. It may vary a little bit depending on your situation, but it doesn't take all that long. So that's the scary part, getting the first foot in to get somebody to take a chance on you. But once you have that, it's all good. And there are absolutely job descriptions out there which states junior programmer. They're not as frequent as some of the others, and I'll tell you why. Or rather, I think that you're probably clever enough to understand why. Because, you know, business care about money, and skill is money. Skilled programmers are equal to money. It's actually very funny because Google, it was a while since I read this, but I don't know if this is still true, but in the article I read, they actually said that they measure in terms of, when they estimate their assets in terms of money value, they estimate their engineers as part of those assets. In other words, the demand and the skill of programmers basically is so valuable to IT that you can actually measure them as real income. It really only comes down to the organization to have the ability to monetize the skills of their developers, because if they can monetize the skill of their developers, every developer they have is more money. That's the way consultancies work, for example. A consultancy, and this is a warning to you juniors out there. Consultancies are ruthless. They will, and goes extra true for us which are at the mid-level or even more senior. If a consultancy calls you up and says that they want to talk to you, and you ask if they have a job for you, and they say yes, don't believe them. Also that they just want to earmark you so that they can make money off you, because they know that, or rather I've seen this 100 times, they are virtually door salesmen. They contact you because they think that, or rather because they know if they can just get you to sign on with them, they have made money. It's like selling insurance. As soon as they get you they are already making money off of you. That's how massive the demand is, and that's how valuable software programmers, software developers are. So, first high demand job title there is junior level programmer. Now, next level is just in general. There are people, it kind of depends on your definition of this, but it's going to just be software developer. Now, a software developer, the difference between a software developer and a junior software developer is roughly between 1 to 3 years of experience. Depends on how skilled you are, depends on your circumstance, and it depends on your what do you call it? On your aptitude, basically, or how you want to define things. I mean, I have classmates that call themselves senior Android developers, and they started calling themselves that when they came out of school. Don't know really about that, but that's the way that they label themselves. Anywho, and then you have a senior software developer, and senior software developers are probably the most in-demand thing in the world. That's the big money maker. That's the one that every single company out there wants to hire. That's the one that can almost pick where they want to work. It's almost at that point. And these people are the sort of people who have at least 5 years of experience, I would say. It kind of depends, but it usually is 5 years of experience and plus. So if you have managed to scrape together 5 years of work experience, and you can show it, because remember, it's not about the years, it's about the skill. Years and time is just an indicator of skill, nothing else. If you have worked for 5 years and all you ever did was to go to PowerPoint presentations and you can't code, that's not going to help you. So remember that staying relevant is kind of the undertone or the subtle assumption I'm making here. You always have to be relevant. But so those are the most, probably you can figure these out. These are the common ones. Now, next up, this is the ones that may be a little bit more obscure to those who are not working in IT. Next up is tech lead. So a tech lead, this is kind of funny because you don't actually have to be a senior software developer to be a tech lead. But a tech lead is virtually a team leader. It's the person who handles or manages the software team that they're working in. Ideally, it should be, and at least that's what I like, ideally this should be the most skilled developer you have, the most senior one with good leadership skills. It's basically the person who handles or manages the communication and the scheduling and the interaction and also sorts of things for the software team, and make sure that they receive training and guidance and leadership and all that good stuff. So that's an also very sought after position. And it's also one that even if you have 10 years of experience as a software developer, unless you have the required leadership skills, you're not going to make a good software lead. I've met guys who have, I mean, at my previous job, I wouldn't consider him to be a senior software developer necessarily, but he was a really, really good tech lead. And I've been talking to really, really large companies where the person who was supposed to be my tech lead absolutely sucked at it. He had no flair, no social skills whatsoever. I was like, this guy doesn't lead. I suppose he's in my opinion, I think he just sits in meetings, because he had nothing that brought value to the team. That's a little bit harsh, I'm sorry, but like in my personal opinion, if you go in, it's the same thing with being a teacher. Certain people make good teachers, certain people do not. And if you don't have the, well, I suppose, I don't know what to call it, but this is the way I think about it. Or rather, this is actually what I said to my boss when they asked me if I wanted to be someday would want to be the tech lead at my company. And I said, if my team wants it. And they kind of went, what do you mean? Well, you see, the thing is that I don't need to be in charge. I can be in charge if I've earned the respect and my team wants me to be in charge. If they say, oh, Fredrik is really good at this stuff, we want him to be in charge. If they want it, then I've earned it. But then there are people who are in it for the money or the career and anything like that, and they basically just they jump in and they don't have the aptitude, they don't have the passion, they lack what it is required. And I've seen what happens when you have really bad leaders who really they're really only there as a stepping stone. They don't care about the team, they don't care about the company. It gets really tricky, or they're really incompetent. Anywho, let's go to the next one. So once you tech lead is probably the first management level thing and one of the more popular job titles out there. And then you have CTO, Chief Technical Officer. Now, it is very, very, very rare that this is the sort of position that you just apply for. It is out there, and depending on the size of the company, CTO is it stands for Chief Technical Officer, and the idea is basically that you have a person who is in charge of managing all of the engineers. In a large company, that means that you are a guy in a suit, you sit in PowerPoint meetings all day, every day, and you take technical decisions and direction. Your job, virtually, if you're getting this job, you're getting it not because necessarily that you are a skilled engineer, but more because you've advanced to a point where your business management skills and your knowledge of IT in general is so massive, and your connections are massive and so forth, that you can make things happen for an entire organization. To put it in perspective, some of the founders of Google, for example, there you have your CTOs. That's the level we're talking about. So there are absolutely companies out there who are looking for these sort of people, but I can tell you that you are not going. It's not like you're going to find a job ad of somebody looking for a CTO. You have to know. At least that's what I think. You have to know people in order to get such a job, but you can, and then you can have something very similar to a CTO, where you're an architect, for example, where most of what you do is that you structure at the conceptual level the entire infrastructure of the system, and you have this is usually somewhere where you go if you are very into different technologies and you know a lot of different tools and you have experience working in different ways of working. Basically, this is also fairly close to what a CTO does, but as I said, it very much depends on the type of business that you're working in. So these are the programmer related professions out there that I would say that I meet quite often. These are the titles that I see almost all the time in the job ads and that I meet in my everyday work. Hopefully this was useful to you. Have a great day.